All right, next question. In a middle management position, what's the best way to support the company and leadership you work for while still showing your fellow workers they are supported and appreciated? I work in surgery at a large hospital within an even larger corporation. This is one of those things, and I remember saying, I'm sure I got this from Hackworth, but it's one of those things that I've said so many times I actually probably forget to even give credit to Hackworth. But you know, when little problems would arise up the chain of command, and I'd be like, everyone hates the echelon of command above them, right? That's the way it is. Like, and that's just the way it is. That's the way it is. It's always they don't get it. It's always they don't understand. Unless you get somebody that really knows how to explain and communicate down the chain of command so that everyone understands why they're doing what they're doing. That's what this is. That's exactly what this is. Like, what's the best way to support the company and leadership? It's to take what the company and the leadership of the company says and translate it to the troops in a way that they understand and that means something to them, right? So you go to a big meeting and, you know, like let's say an all hands meeting for a company, and the CEO is saying, hey, we made $87 million last year profit. And if all the frontline troops are in there, they're like, well, that's cool. But I didn't see any of that. I didn't see that reflected in my paycheck. By the way, you gave me a $4 raise over the last 3 years. How about some of that $87 million? Kick it down to the people. So that's problematic because we aren't explaining. Hey, that statement right there will actually make people mad. The CEO's thinking everyone's going to love me because I'm telling them how profitable we are as a company. All everyone's thinking is, well, then why can't you afford to buy me that piece of gear that we need on the front lines? What's your problem? So you actually think you're helping, but you're actually hurting unless you can explain to people, look, we made this much profit. Here's how it's going to benefit us as a company and you as a frontline troop. By us making this much money, it means we can grow these areas. It means we can bring on more people. That means everyone in this room right now, in the next 3 years, you're going to have an opportunity to be in a leadership position. That's what I'm talking about. That's why we're trying to grow. That's why we're trying to do better. By the way, this is snowballing even more because now we're putting more money into advertising. We've got a whole advertising campaign that's going out. We've invested a bunch of money in that, and it's going to bring us more business. And that means the jobs that you think might not be stable, your job, if you don't think it's stable, it just got stable because we have the capital to get this machine moving even faster. So when you do that, when you explain to the troops why something's happening, it makes them understand, and it shows your people, hey, you're supporting. Are there times where you should push back? Yes, there are. And if something makes no sense whatsoever, you should raise your hand and say, hey, let me run this up the chain of command. Let me run this up the chain of command and explain why this isn't a good idea. And that way you can go, and when you get the reason, because there'll be a reason, and it might not be the best reason, but it'll be a reason, and you go back to the troops and say, hey, here's why this is going on. This is what's happening. This is the decision they made. And you know what? We're going to do our best to execute it because that's what we do. We make things happen. We're going to get it done. Boom.
And we've got a great depiction of that in the talking about being humble, not passive, and pushing back where it matters in the dichotomy of leadership. That whole section is talking exactly about that. It's a very hard thing, you know, for people. And the basis of this question, though, is the us versus them, right? Front lines versus corporate headquarters, and you've got to defeat that. If you're a good leader, you got to recognize, look, we're all on the same team. We can't do what we need to do without having the support and the resources and the approvals of plans from the corporate headquarters. And at corporate headquarters, that oftentimes, so not only is there frustration up the chain, there's also frustration down the chain. You hear that all the time, like, well, the front lines, they don't really get it. They don't get it over there. Well, listen, the front lines is where the actual mission gets won or lost.
Yeah.
So you've got to.
You might want to have them on board with the program.
Exactly. So you got to make sure that that it's got to. If you want a successful team, you can't have us versus them. Everybody's
get on board for the big win.
Get on board for the big win.
Yeah, well, the Full Metal Jacket, right? What's your problem, son? Why don't you get on board for the big win? And you think, oh well, if I'm the general and I'm telling this young guy that's got a peace sign on his helmet that represents the dichotomy. Maybe that's where I learned the word dichotomy from. That represents the dichotomy of what does he say? The dichotomy of man.
I think he says the duality of man.
The duality of man. Yeah, you're right. That represents the duality of man. Why don't you take that thing off and get on board for the big win? And that's such a great line from that movie.
Join the team, son. Get on board for the big win.
That's such a great line from that movie because that's exactly what we're talking about. That does absolutely nothing for that frontline soldier that goes, oh, okay, you're saying that, and I'm literally burying people right now in this situation. And so for you saying that to me means nothing. In fact, it shows how completely freaking out of touch you are. And so they did a great job in that movie of representing that through one single line. Hey, why don't you just get on board for the big win? It's like, well, no. Actually, why don't you lead? How does that sound? So, communicate up and down the chain of command. Make sure people know why and tie in why it matters to them.